Okay, so for today's, it's proofs. So we're starting proofs. This is kind of like an intro to proofs. It's really just Algebra 1 proofs. The whole point of proofs is to, as you solve a specific problem, justify the reasoning or state the reasoning that you're doing the proof, or like what step you're doing. So if we do number 1 to start, we'll do a couple together. Number 1, if I put the given, this is the problem, is always going to be step 1. The reason why for the first step is because it's given. So you will always put given in the first step, and it's always the problem that they give you. They also give you the answer. They tell you x equals 7. So it's not really about the answer. It's how you get to the answer. So I'm going to think about how I would solve this two-step equation using my algebra knowledge that I already know. I'm trying to isolate the x. So what I would do is mathematically, I would move my 9. It's positive. So to move it, I would really be doing -9. And I don't want you to write this part. I'm just going to put it lightly under my paper. You're not writing the work. You're not showing the work. These would really cross out. I'm just bringing down the next step. So I have -4x. And then if I take -19 and I minus 9, I get -28. What I did, that step that's not shown, is subtraction, property of equality. So when I'm doing something to both sides of the equation and I'm getting something to cancel, it's always a property of equality. So in this case, I subtracted 9, so it's subtraction. The next step would be to divide both sides by -4. So I'm going to show that in pencil. Put it really small because you're not really supposed to show the work. The answer would be x equals +7, which they told me to prove x equals -7. How I went from this step to this step is division. Since I did it to both sides, it's called division, property of equality. The next question is very similar. I'm given a two-step equation and I need to solve for x. They say given and prove that x equals -9. So my first step is always going to be filling in the statement. The reason is given. So x minus 3 divided by 6 equals -2. And given will automatically be the first step. So if I think about how I'm solving this, I have to get rid of two things, the -3 and the 6. So I have to undo my division first before I can get rid of the -3. So before that, I'm going to move my 6 to the other side. The opposite of division is multiplication because a fraction is fancy division. So when I multiply by 6, I'm really crossing them out. But what I do to one side, I have to do the other side. So I'm left with x minus 3 equals -12. And what I did to go from here to here is multiplication, property of equality. The last step to get x completely by itself is to get rid of that -3. The opposite of subtraction is addition. So I would really be adding 3 to both sides. So if I add 3 to both sides, I get x equals -9. -12 plus 3 is -9. That's the answer they told me. To go from step 2 to step 3, I added. So it's addition, property of equality. Okay, so last problem, we're going to skip 3 and 4. So you guys can try those ones. We're going to go to number 5. I want to do one of the hard ones together. So number 5 says, given -7 multiplied by x minus 4 plus 2x equals -2 multiplied by x minus 5, Once again, they give me the answer. I'm trying to prove that x equals 6. So the first step is always going to be the problem. The first reason will always be given. So I'm going to write a little small because it's a little big. So -7 x minus 4 plus 2x equals -2 x minus 5. Reason is given. So if you're looking at this equation, this is a harder algebra 1 problem. It's a multi-step equation. So I have to get rid of these parentheses. I can't actually combine what's inside of them. An x and a 4 do not combine, an x and a 5 do not combine, but I can get rid of them by using the distributive property. So if I distribute -7 into the parentheses, and then I distribute -2 into the parentheses, that will get rid of the parentheses. So -7 times x is -7x. -7 times -4, a negative and a negative will make a positive 28. Bring down plus 2x. -2 times x is -2x. -2 times -5 is positive 10. So that is the reason is distributive property. So now there's technically 6 different ways, maybe like 5 or 6 different ways you could solve this equation. You could start subtracting 10 or subtracting 28 or moving numbers, but the proper way to solve this equation would be within 6 steps. So if it was not a proof, you could solve it however you want. But because it's a proof, I have to do it a certain way or else I might end up with a 7th or even 8th step. So I'm trying to condense. So the proper way, the next step that I should do is actually combine -7x and 2x together because they're on the same side of the equal sign. They're both on the left side. I would combine like terms to simplify my problem. So if I combine -7 and +2, that makes -5x plus 28 equals -2x plus 10. The step for that is literally, you could say simplify, or you could say combine like terms. Now, same thing at this point, you could move anything. You could -10, -28, add 2, or add 5. At this point, there's 4 different ways to solve this equation. The most proper way is so that way the x stays on the left and your answer should stay on the right. So instead of moving the 10, people might think 10 is smaller, so I should -10 to both sides. You're going to end up with your variable on the opposite side. So what I always do in class is I always move whatever number's on the left and I move it to the right. So in this case, I'm actually going to move the 28 to the 10. So the opposite of positive 28 is -28. So if I subtract 28 to both sides, I get -5x equals -2x. 10 minus 28 is -18. That is called subtraction property of equality. And to shorten it, just because I want to keep writing property of equality, we'll say POE for property of equality. Now, since I moved the 28 to the right, I'm going to move the 2x to the left. So the opposite of negative is positive. So I'm going to add 2x here. I'm going to add 2x here. They technically cross out. -5 plus 2 is -3. That is addition property of equality that I just did. And now last step, I would divide by -3 to both sides. So if I divide by -3, I get x equals 6, which is the answer that I got. Notice x is on the left, my number's on the right. That's the way I want it because that's the way the answer is provided. So this is division property of equality. Hey, Sorry, I was just making